No wife, no kids, no real direction. That's how my brother's family summed me up this Christmas. They even went as far as taking my savings, nodding in agreement like I was just a burden. I forced a smile and walked out. Few days later, I had a flood of voicemails from them, each one sounding more desperate than the last. I never thought I'd be one of those people sharing a story online, but after how things went down at Christmas, I've got to get this off my chest. You ever walk into a room and suddenly everyone stops talking? That was how my Christmas morning began. I got to my mom's place around 11, just like she asked, but turns out everyone else had already been there for hours. The living room looked like a holiday storm had passed through, wrapping paper everywhere, presents already opened, breakfast being cleared away. My nephew Ethan, Brad's boy, was already deep into one of his new video games. Honestly, I should have realized something was off when they didn't even wait for me, even though Mom was clear about the time. It was our first Christmas without Dad. He passed in September, and everything felt a little unbalanced. Mom gave me a long hug when I arrived, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Melissa, my sister-in-law, barely lifted her gaze from her phone and just mumbled something like, "Oh, you made it," as if I were a +1 no one invited. I placed the gifts I brought under the tree and tried to act like the awkwardness didn't bother me. Ethan, bless that kid, actually seemed excited to see me. He bounced up, eager to show off his gaming setup. He's always been the highlight of these get-togethers for me. But before I could really enjoy the moment, Brad stepped in with a jab, said something like, "Don't bother Uncle Jake. He probably doesn't get how any of this works." Then he tossed in, "Too busy doing whatever it is he does." Not exactly subtle. The truth is, I've done all right. I work remote in tech, and I've built a life that gives me freedom to travel. Dad always backed my choices, even if they weren't what Brad considered normal. But ever since Dad passed, those little digs have gotten more frequent and sharper. The real unraveling started over lunch. Mom had cooked Dad's Christmas roast for the first time since he died, and there was this weird, heavy silence as we all sat down. Melissa finally decided to stir the pot, asking, "So Jake, got someone special yet? You're not getting any younger, you know. Maybe it's time to settle down. Ethan could use some cousins." Before I could get a word out, Brad cut in with a laugh that wasn't exactly friendly. He's too busy enjoying his bachelor freedom. No wife, no kids, no actual life, right? The table either nodded or avoided eye contact, like this was something they'd all agreed on behind my back. I kept my cool, stayed focused on my meal. I'm genuinely content with my life, even if it doesn't look traditional. Full of what? Melissa pushed, laying down her fork. Sitting behind a computer all day? Hopping from one hotel room to the next? That's not really living. It's just existing. Then she added, "Your father would have wanted." I cut her off, sharper than I meant to. Don't tell me what Dad would have wanted. The mood instantly shifted, like someone had pulled the plug on the whole room. Mom quickly tried to steer the conversation toward New Year's plans, but Brad wasn't done. "No, we need to have this conversation," he said, leaning forward like he was about to drop some big truth. "The will's being read next week, and it's time we get real about things." His voice dropped like he was saying something meaningful. "You've got all this money saved up and zero responsibilities," he continued. "Meanwhile, we're doing everything we can to give Ethan the life he deserves. It's just not fair." That's when I noticed the look on Mom's face. She looked almost ashamed. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. I asked what exactly he meant by being realistic, even though I was starting to see where this was heading. Melissa was the one who jumped in next, her voice syrupy sweet. "We've had some unexpected costs," Melissa said carefully. "Ethan's school isn't cheap, and there were those home repairs Dad said he'd help with before everything." Then she added, "We had to pull from what we assumed would be coming from the will." My stomach turned. "Pull from where?" I asked, even though I already didn't like where this was going. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Then Mom finally spoke, so softly I barely caught it. "Your share, sweetheart." She said they, meaning Brad and Melissa, needed it. "You already have so much saved," she said, "and they've got a family to provide for." It felt like a punch straight to the chest. "You took from what Dad left me, and didn't even tell me." "Borrowed," Brad said, trying to dress it up like that changed anything. "Besides, what would you even do with it? You're not exactly a vital part of this family." He let the words hang. "No wife, no kids, no one depending on you. You're just coasting through life while the rest of us are out here doing the real work." Everyone nodded along. Even Mom, though it looked like it hurt her to agree. Ethan was the only one who didn't join in. He'd stopped eating, just staring down at his plate. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping back loud against the floor. Everything went still again. They were probably expecting me to lose it. Instead, I smiled. "Thanks for lunch, Mom. I need to head out." "Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic," Melissa snapped, but I was already walking toward the door. I heard Brad behind me, throwing out one last jab about me always running from confrontation. I drove home like I was in a fog. By the time I got back to my place, my phone was lighting up, mostly messages from Mom, begging to talk things through. One from Brad, telling me to man up and accept reality. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Dad's lawyer and left a message. "First thing tomorrow, I'm getting clarity, what exactly they did with my inheritance and what they meant by borrowing." But the part that keeps echoing in my mind? It's the last talk I had with Dad, just a week before he passed. He made me promise I'd look after the family, but also not let anyone walk all over me. Back then, I thought it was just the meds talking. Now, I'm not so sure. Maybe he saw this coming. I'm still figuring out what comes next, but I do know I'm not letting this slide. Not because of the money, but because of what it means. They want to talk about responsibility in real life? Fine, let's talk. My phone's still buzzing. I think I'll let it ring a while longer. What I found out goes way deeper than I expected. Yesterday morning, I sat down with Dad's lawyer, Mr. Harris. He didn't even look surprised to see me. That was the first sign something was off. "I've been expecting your call," he said, and pulled out a thick folder. Turns out, Dad left detailed instructions about all this. He knew. He knew everything. Mr. Harris started by showing me a bunch of loan documents. Every single one had my name on it. At least 6 signatures had been faked over the past year, pulling money directly from the inheritance Dad left in a trust for me. Altogether, they drained just over $250,000. I felt sick just looking at those signatures. They weren't even good forgeries. But then it got even more interesting. Mr. Harris brought out one more document, Dad's actual will, signed just 2 weeks before he passed. He told me Dad had changed it after a particularly troubling conversation with Brad. Then he handed me the bank statements. Brad and Melissa aren't just tight on cash, they're drowning in debt. That private school they always brag about? Turns out they haven't paid the tuition in months. The fancy house upgrades? Mostly charged to credit cards. They've been living way beyond what they can actually afford, using Dad's poor health near the end as an excuse to take out loans they assumed the inheritance would cover. While Mr. Harris was laying all this out, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I finally glanced at it during a pause, 18 missed calls, 17 voicemails, and more texts than I cared to scroll through. Some of the highlights. From Brad, "You're being selfish. Ethan's future is on the line." Melissa, "Your father would be ashamed of what you're doing." Mom's message was softer. "Please, sweetheart. Let's talk this through. They made mistakes, but we're still family." But the one that hit me the hardest? It came from Ethan. "Uncle Jake, I'm sorry about what happened at Christmas. Mom and Dad shouldn't have said those things." He's only 12, yet somehow he gets it more than the adults in the room. Then Mr. Harris shared something that completely flipped everything on its head. Dad had set up specific conditions in the revised will. Anyone who pulled money through unauthorized loans has to repay every cent before they can touch their share of the inheritance. And here's the kicker. Dad made me the one responsible for managing the repayment. "Your father was very clear about this," Mr. Harris said, handing me a handwritten note from him. In it, Dad wrote, "Jake understands the value of money and responsibility more than anyone gives him credit for. He'll know what to do." We were wrapping up when Mr. Harris said there was one more thing. He reached for another file. Apparently, just last month, Brad tried to have me declared financially irresponsible. His goal? To gain full control of my portion of the inheritance. Suddenly, all those snide comments about my job and travels made sense. They weren't just being judgmental, they were trying to build a legal case against me. As I left the office, another voicemail came through, this time from Melissa. Her voice was shaky. "We need to talk," she said. "You don't understand everything. The school's threatening to kick Ethan out if we don't pay by next week. Please, maybe we can figure something out." I sat in my car for a long time after that, just staring at Dad's letter. Near the end, he had written, "They'll try to guilt you. They'll call you selfish. But real responsibility isn't about caving to pressure. It's about making the hard calls for the right reasons." And then something I didn't expect. Check the garage at the old house. Bottom shelf, behind the paint cans. I left something there you'll need. I drove over to the house, technically Mom's now. Luckily, no one was home. The garage was still set up just the way Dad liked it. Tools perfectly lined up like he'd never left. Behind the paint cans, I found a small fireproof safe. I tried my birthday, and it opened. Inside was another letter, a handful of USB drives, and a detailed ledger documenting every loan Brad had taken, not just from my trust, but from Dad over the years. The totals were shocking. The letter inside started with, "If you're reading this, then they finally went too far. Here's everything you need to protect yourself, and maybe help them learn something in the process." My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. "They're coming over tomorrow morning. Please be here. We need to handle this as a family." I looked at everything from the safe spread across my desk, then down at Dad's words. The last line read, "Sometimes love means not backing down. You're stronger than they think you are. Tomorrow's going to be one for the books. I've already made copies of everything and sent them to Mr. Harris for safekeeping. I'm done being the family's punching bag, but I'm not out for revenge either. Dad trusted me to do this the right way, and that's exactly what I intend to do." The latest message I got was from Ethan. "Are you coming tomorrow? I hope you do. Someone needs to tell them the truth." Out of everything blowing up my phone, that one hit me the most, and it's the only one I'm choosing to focus on. I probably should have known something was off the second I pulled up to Mom's house this morning and saw 3 unfamiliar cars in the driveway. Brad hadn't just brought Melissa, he brought backup. There they all were in the living room, Aunt Karen, Uncle Mike, and a longtime family friend who just so happens to be a financial advisor, lined up like they were staging some kind of intervention. Brad wasted no time. "Good, you're here," he said. "Now we can figure out how to clean up the mess you're making of this family." I nearly laughed out loud. This was their move? Mom was hovering just inside the kitchen doorway, already clutching a tissue in one hand. Melissa sat stiff and polished on the couch, dressed like she was heading into a job interview. Ethan wasn't around, probably sent to a friend's place so he wouldn't witness the fallout. I took Dad's old armchair by the window. Something about sitting there grounded me. I stayed quiet. Just waited. Brad can't handle silence, it makes him squirm. Sure enough, he started rambling to fill the space. "We've been talking," he said, gesturing to everyone in the room. "And we think you're not seeing the full picture here. Dad's will, it's just creating unnecessary stress." Then came their pitch. They had a proposal. Their advisor pulled out a folder. I spotted the logo right away. It was from the same firm that handles Mom's mortgage. That was telling. Their plan was predictable. Restructure the inheritance. They wanted immediate access to their full shares, plus temporary control over mine, to manage the family's assets more effectively. In exchange, they'd start paying back the loans in 5 years. I let them finish. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out Dad's ledger. "Before we talk about any of that," I said, "let's discuss the Willow Creek property." Everything froze. And Karen suddenly got really interested in her coffee. For those wondering, Willow Creek is a rental Dad owned. 3 units, paid off in full, brought in steady income. Everyone assumed it had been left to Mom. Brad jumped in fast. "That's not relevant," he said, too quickly. I opened the ledger to a marked page. "Not relevant?" I asked. "Because this says you took out a second mortgage on it 6 months ago. Used Mom's power of attorney while Dad was in the hospital." Then I looked at Mom. "Did you know about that, Brad?" Her tissue slipped from her hand. "What's he talking about?" she asked, her voice cracking. "It was temporary," Melissa cut in before he could answer. "We needed capital for an opportunity. It's under control." "Under control?" I turned to their financial advisor. "That why the property is now in pre-foreclosure?" That's when Mom broke down. Not quiet tears, this was deep, gut-wrenching sobs that made everyone go stiff. "My units," she cried. "Frank and I bought those when we first got married. They were supposed to be our retirement." Brad shot me a look full of rage. "You had no right digging into private family matters." "Private?" I said. "Like forging my name on loans? Or opening 3 credit cards in Mom's name?" Silence again. The financial advisor quietly started gathering up his paperwork. "That's different," Brad said, now sounding more desperate than angry. "We were trying to protect the family. You've never really understood what that means. You're off chasing whatever life you think you've built, while we're over here trying to make things work." "Right?" I said. "Like losing $500,000 on online trading. Like borrowing against every asset in reach. Like draining Ethan's entire college fund." Melissa shot up from the couch. "You arrogant little." You think you're so perfect? She snapped. At least we're trying to build something. What do you even have? Then she sneered. A bunch of empty apartments scattered around. Photos from trips no one cares about. I kept my eyes on her. I have no debt. I have no debt, I said quietly. And more importantly, I had Dad's trust. That's when a soft voice drifted from the stairs. Is it true? About my college fund? We all turned. Ethan was sitting halfway down the steps, gripping his phone tightly. He must have been listening the whole time. Sweetheart, go to your room, Melissa said quickly, but Ethan cut her off. I recorded everything, he said, voice shaking. From the beginning. He looked at me. Uncle Jake wasn't lying, was he? About the stealing. The room fell apart after that. Melissa started crying, Brad was yelling, and Mom couldn't stop sobbing about the Willow Creek property. Aunt Karen and Uncle Mike quietly slipped out during the chaos. Before leaving, the financial advisor handed me his card and whispered that he'd been trying to warn the family about Brad's schemes for months. In the middle of it all, Ethan walked over and sat next to me. He didn't say a word, just rested his hand on the armrest of Dad's old chair. It was a small gesture, but in that moment, it felt enormous. Once everyone had screamed themselves hoarse, I pulled out the final piece of the puzzle, Dad's updated will, complete with repayment conditions. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. Willow Creek goes under trust management immediately to stop the foreclosure. All credit cards in Mom's name are canceled. Ethan's remaining college fund gets locked in a new account. Only he can touch it when he turns 18. Then I looked at Brad and Melissa. And you two start mandatory financial counseling next week. Brad scoffed. Or what? Or I take this folder full of forged documents straight to the police. Silence. Again. Mom finally spoke, her voice raw. The units, can they be saved? Yes, I told her gently. Dad left enough in the estate to cover it. But only if Brad and Melissa agree to everything I just laid out. I handed out printed copies of the repayment plan. While they read through them, my phone buzzed, a message from Mr. Harris. Your father would be proud. Final meeting tomorrow to seal it all. Before anyone could object, Ethan spoke up again. Dad, just sign it. Please. I don't want to show everyone at school what you really did. Brad turned pale. The recording. His own son. Melissa signed first. Brad followed, his hand trembling, could have been anger, shame, or both. On the drive home, the messages started pouring in. Brad sent threats. Mom left teary voicemails, asking for forgiveness. And Ethan texted, asking if he could come stay with me for a few days until things cooled off. Tomorrow we meet with Mr. Harris to make it all official. But something tells me this isn't the end. Brad's too proud, Melissa's too desperate, and there's decades of family baggage we haven't even touched yet. At least now the truth's out there. Even if it's not what they wanted to hear. It's been 2 weeks since that family gathering. What happened wasn't just some family disagreement getting settled. It was the full collapse of the carefully crafted illusion my brother had built around himself. Some people might call it karma. I call it justice. The morning after our family showdown, Brad made one final, fatal mistake. He tried to clean out all of Mom's bank accounts. What he didn't realize was that I'd already frozen everything the night before. That move triggered exactly what I'd hoped, a fraud alert and a full investigation. And this is where Dad's planning really came through. Those USB drives I found in the garage? They weren't just backups. They held years' worth of recorded conversations. Dad had been documenting everything, every loan request, every lie, every bit of manipulation. The last audio file? It was recorded in his hospital room, Brad begging him to sign over power of attorney while he was barely conscious. With Mr. Harris's help, we executed everything by the book. We sent the forged signatures and other evidence straight to the proper authorities. Then we laid out the credit card fraud in full. The look on Brad's face when investigators showed up at his office? Apparently priceless. One of his coworkers even emailed me the security footage. Melissa, meanwhile, went into full spin mode. She started calling everyone they knew, claiming I was tearing the family apart. But that financial advisor from our family meeting? Well, turns out that financial advisor had been quietly collecting his own receipts on their shady dealings. When he laid out proof that Brad and Melissa had been running a mini investment scam through their friend group, it didn't take long for the tide to turn. Their so-called friends dropped them like a bad stock. And the school? The irony there was almost poetic. Ethan, braver than most adults I know, had sent his recordings to the school board. Not only did they approve emergency aid for him, But they also kicked off a full-blown investigation into those charitable donations his parents claimed on their taxes. Spoiler, those donations never happened. Mom finally saw their true colors when Brad, in a last-ditch move, tried to throw her under the bus, claimed she'd approved all the loans and credit cards. That's when I played the final card I'd been holding Dad's last video. He'd recorded it a week before he passed, outlining exactly how Brad had lied, stolen, and manipulated both our parents for years. Willow Creek? Saved and restructured. Mom's retirement? Protected. And Ethan's college fund? Not just restored, tripled, thanks to a hidden investment account Dad had set up just for him when he was born. Brad never even knew it existed. But what really caught me off guard came from Aunt Karen. You remember her silent in that big family meeting? She finally admitted why she'd stood by Brad for so long. He'd been blackmailing her, threatening to expose fake tax fraud if she didn't stay quiet. Once that was exposed, she turned over years of emails showing just how deep Brad's manipulation went. After that, the dominoes fell fast. Brad's job? Suspended while they investigate. Their country club? Canceled. Apparently, they've been billing other members for thousands in charges. Their dream home? Going into foreclosure. And their social life? Gone. 3 of their former friends are now suing them over the scam. And Melissa? She went for one last desperate play, tried to hold a press conference, if you can believe it, to claim she was a victim of circumstance. Ethan shut that down in record time. He posted screenshots from a group chat where she literally planned to con more family members. They're now moving into his small apartment across town. Ethan's staying with me for a while. We've got full legal clearance, thanks to Mr. Harris and his network. The judge was especially alarmed by a recording of Brad threatening to make Ethan pay for exposing their lies. Mom's starting to heal too. Yesterday, we were going through Dad's old office and found a letter he'd written me years ago. It said, "Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their actions." That line hit hard. It's sad, really, how rock bottom sometimes ends up being the only place someone can start over. Our family dynamics have changed for good. Most relatives have cut ties with Brad and Melissa. The ones who haven't? They're keeping their distance. Mom started hosting Sunday dinners again. They're smaller now. Quieter. No more manipulation hanging in the air. But the best part? Seeing Ethan come into his own. Freed from all that toxic pressure, he's thriving grades up, making real friends, and just the other day, he told me he wants to go into finance. Not to make money. To help people. His exact words? So I can fix the kind of stuff they broke. As for me, I bought the Willow Creek property from Mom, fully above board, fair price, everything documented. I'm turning it into affordable housing. One rule, Brad and Melissa will never live there. Is that petty? Maybe. But satisfying? Without a doubt. Dad's voice echoes in my head every now and then. Sometimes love means watching someone lose everything they stole, so they can finally build something real. Brad and Melissa are now facing multiple investigations, lawsuits, and complete exile from the life they worked so hard to fake. That house of cards didn't just tumble, it went up in flames. And yeah, I made sure to record every single second of its collapse. The rest of the family thinks this is the end of it. They're wrong. I've already set up a trust fund for Ethan, airtight, untouchable, even when he turns 18. And every cent that was stolen from me? It's all coming back. With interest. Even if I have to collect it one paycheck at a time. Their reputation in town? Completely shattered. Not because anyone lied or spread rumors, but because the truth finally saw the light. Turns out, when people see you for who you really are, there's no mask left to hide behind. And sometimes, real justice isn't just watching someone fall. It's making sure they can't fake who they are ever again. Ethan's still living with me, and he'll be staying through the rest of the school year. Last night, he came to me holding Dad's final letter and asked if we could frame it to hang in his room. When I asked why, he just said, "Because I want to remember that doing the right thing matters more than pretending to be right." That hit me right in the chest. Looks like Dad's legacy will live on after all. Just not through the son everyone thought he'd choose.